Murder attempt survivors. What happened? Not sure if this counts, but a junkie found the home I had made for myself inside a hedge and wanted very much to stab me. But he was pretty drunk and it didn't work out for him. He just left after I took away his knife and kicked him a few times. It was pretty shocking for me and was the incident that got me making an effort to get my life back together, start working again and finish school. My heart dropped when I saw this question. I was 15 and my dad plotted to murder me. My dad had only been back around for a few months after being homeless for a while due to his 20+ year meth addiction. He had never been violent towards me before, but I later found out he had tried to kill my mother just months prior and she brushed it off as him having a PTSD episode. I came home from school. He surprise attacked me by suffocating me with a pillow, strangling, and attempted to sexually assault me. I had just gotten a boyfriend and wasn't around as often, and by the language he used when trying to assault me, it was clear this was the source of his anger. He had the TV turned up to an extreme volume so no one could hear me scream. I ended up being able to get up and run to the bathroom, the only room in our house with a lock. He grabbed the door, but I found a sharp object in the bathroom and told him to back up or I'd kill him. I somehow was able to shove the door shut and lock it. He tried to get in the bathroom but couldn't. He actually said I'm leaving and closed the front door to try and lure me out. It was quiet for a while, but then I heard him breathing outside the door. He eventually left after a few hours, taking my money I had hidden in my bedroom, and called a relative telling them I'd been in a terrible accident and he needed a ride to the hospital. He ended up running when dropped off and was missing for a year. Most terrifying year of my life. His body was found by a fisherman at his favorite lake growing up. They found high levels of meth in his system and it appeared to be a suicide. Later, when investigating the home I was attacked in, they found hammers, duct tape, knives under my mom's mattress and looked like he very much so intended to kill me. It is awful that he could kill his daughter and his wife, and I'm glad you're okay. Hope you're doing better now. At the beginning of October my husband was trying to buy a PS5 on Letgo. He wanted to make sure it actually worked, so he gave the guy our address. I told him a dozen times that he was going to get robbed. He still had the kid come over. As soon as he got there he pulled a gun, grabbed the cash and shot twice. One hit my husband in the abdomen. The second went through the stairs behind him and traveled 30-40 feet to the kitchen. I heard the commotion and ran downstairs and chased him away from the house. We got to the front gate and he pulled his gun again and shot at me. He missed my head by less than 2 inches. He was caught and is being charged as an adult 16 for 2 counts of attempted murder and a variety of other charges. Jesus, what a ducked up kid. Hope you get the justice you deserve. I was in Thailand, heading back to my apartment from a popular corner of bars in Chiang Mai. I went down the same streets and alleys I always did, cutting through the center of the city to the edge of the moat by Ram Hospital. I passed by the technical college and saw a group of guys hanging on the corner. I didn't think anything of it as I entered the final alley that would put me at the moat and my apartment. 2 mopeds passed me and went into a alcove to my right, and as I passed it they zoomed out and cut me off. 4 guys hopped off their bikes and one approached and said, "Where you going?" and decked me in the face. As I think, did this methodiker really just punch me in the face? I look up and he has his arm up and holding something in a swinging motion, and I did the only thing I could, put my arms up to protect my face and yell out. After several blows to my arm, I attempted to turn and run, but his buddies were there to stop me and kept cutting off my escape. After a couple minutes, cold bean less, it's all a bit of a mess of memory. They all hopped on their bikes and dipped. I have no clue why, maybe it was my yelling, and I looked down at my arm. My left arm, below the wrist, was cut halfway through, one of my bones completely exposed, marrow and everything, my hand hanging uselessly at the end. And I immediately knew I was in deep shit, even though I didn't feel a thing. I have minor medical training, so I took note that no arteries were severed, but I was bleeding profusely and needed help. I went to the guest house nearby and asked the attendant for help. Poor thing looked faint when she saw me, lol. She got me in her car and took me to Ram Hospital literally 100 yards away. Turns out what the guy swung at me was a machete according to the doctor. I thought it was a cane or rod of some sort. So that's my story. It's important for me to say I stayed in Thailand for a year after this event. Despite friends' pleas for me to get the duck out and come home. I wasn't about to let that shit ruin a lifetime opportunity for me. Anyway, I have full function of the arm and hand now. And after 4 years of drinking to bury the memory, I'm happy to say I started therapy 6 months ago. I quit drinking entirely, was diagnosed with PTSD, and am finally addressing the demon who's been hiding in the depths of my mind. And that Methodica has his days numbered. Thanks for reading my story. It's one I just recently had the courage to tell in full, rather than passing it off as shit happens. Peace and love. Redditors. Edit cleaned up the wording. My mum was incredibly abusive. On one occasion, I was around 12 and she came into my room while I was sleeping and stabbed me in the chest with a kitchen knife, puncturing my lung. I didn't know this at the time. Obviously this woke me up and I just rolled out of bed and ran around the house screaming. Someone on our road noticed the noise and called the police. Just before the police arrived, she started choking me and I lost consciousness. I later woke up in the hospital and mostly recovered. She's now in jail. This is not the only time that she tried, but it was the most dramatic and came the closest to actually killing me. I was at a party and was talking to a guy. My ex-boyfriend saw this, was crying, and lured me into a room where he locked the door, proceeded to beat me, and then attempted to strangle me. I was screaming for my life, but no one could hear me over the music at the party. Meanwhile, another friend was searching for his coat that had his cigarettes in it. It happened to be in the room we were in. He realized the door was locked and asked the homeowner to get the key to the room. When they got the door unlocked, they found me being strangled by my ex, but they were able to get him off me in time. I always thank my lucky stars that friend needed a cigarette when he did, probably saved my life. When I was 11, my stepbrother 16 started sexually abusing me, and my little sister didn't know this until much later. She was 8. We had just moved in with him and his family, and it was 5 states from my mom. We didn't know anyone, and my dad took him volunteering spending time with me as him being a nice older brother. After a year, I started to realize that this was seriously wrong and started to fight back. One night, I just got fed up and sick of the shit. So I told him no, and that I was gonna tell my dad what was going on. He started to strangle me, and I believe he would have killed me if my dad didn't come stumbling home from the bar. The next day, I told my mom what happened, and she told my dad. After talking to my sister, he sent me and her on the next flight home to live with my grandparents. He said he tried talking to his wife about it, but she called us liars. He stayed married to her another few years before getting a divorce. I've seen my dad maybe 15 times since it's happened. I've never really told anyone about this but my partner, because the one person I expected to be there for me really wasn't. I feel like he betrayed me and my sister. He may be able to drink himself to forgetting, but I can't, because I have a scar on my neck as a constant reminder. Not me but my dad. When he was in his early 20s, he was in a band staying in a hotel with his NGF. When he woke up in the middle of the night to someone trying to rape her, he pushed him off and they started to fight. He tells the story comically about they fought through the hotel out onto the street. Long story short, the guy ends up stabbing my dad 11 times and leaving him to die on the sidewalk. A stranger was walking his dog at 5 AM, calls an ambulance and keeps on his way. They come, save my old man, re-inflate his lung and he survives. Attacker gets caught and thrown in jail. Find out he had gotten out of jail 2 days prior to the attack for stabbing another person to death. Fast forward a couple years again, and my dad's playing in a band in a bar owned by his buddy. Spots the guy who stabbed him. Tells his friend who owns the bar, "That guy's gotta go, that's the guy who nearly killed me." Stabber gets kicked out and was found hanging the next day in his hotel room. But wait, there's more. 35 years later, My aunt moves to the city we live in and hits up some dating app or some shit and meets the officer who responded to my dad's attack when he was a rookie. So a lifetime later my dad gets to shake the hand of the cop who helped save his life nearly 4 decades earlier. Shit's crazy. Not me but my friend's mom. A co-worker of hers was stalking her, obsessed, convinced he was in love with her and nobody else deserved her. That kind of thing. Eventually he came to their office with a revolver. She was bending down to put files away, or something similar. He quickly approached her from behind and shot her in the back before immediately shooting himself in the head. She survived obviously, though the wounds were significant. Incredibly fortunate she wasn't hit in the spine or major organs. I often wonder how different it would have played out if she had been standing or facing him. More than likely she would be dead. This was before my friend was born, and his mom made a most lethal recovery. Still has chronic pain and PTSD, but she can walk and has a job. Not reclusive or unfriendly to strangers. Terrified of guns, of course. But that seems fair. Both my friend and her are extremely lucky. I don't personally remember this, and only found out the story after I told my mom I have fear of looking out windows at night. Apparently when I was 3 or 4 I was in the kitchen with my mom one night when a man came through the kitchen window and tried to stab her. My father ran in with a gun and shot at the man. He climbed back out the window and the police never found him. Another time when I was 13 we lived in an apartment complex my father owned. At night the laundry room needed to be locked up and the change emptied. The change was close to around 100 a night. I would normally lock up the laundry building around 10 PM. It was a really rough neighborhood. So my father had a large dog, Rottweiler Malamute mix, and he was trained to walk with me everywhere. I was a very small girl and I'm sure that dog was a big deterrent for a lot of people. Anyway, one night I go out to close down the laundry building and my dog won't come inside with me. He is barking up at the sky and won't follow any command I give. I cleaned up the building and gathered the coins, and the whole time my dog is standing by the door looking up at the sky. I lock up the door and turn to leave, and a man jumps down off the roof. He has a huge knife in his hand. He yelled something over my dog losing his mind barking and growling. He had a crazy shit-eating grin on his face. He then tried to run at me, and my dog jumped up on him. I ran back to our apartment, and my dog stayed back to fight him. I told my dad what happened and we ran back to get my dog and find the man. My dog was stabbed 3 times and needed to be hospitalized for days at the vet. He pulled through and lived many more years. They never found the guy. He pointed the gun at my face, pulled the trigger, and it didn't fire. I cold beaten Usain Bolt in the next 10 seconds. Glad you're still around to tell the tale. I have a good friend with a similar story. He thinks the gun jammed, or the safety was still on or something. He likes to say you've never seen a fat boy move so fast after that. My twin sister and grandpa were killed during a home invasion. I should been there, but I left to go give a drinking friend a ride home. When I came back there were police and tape and ambulances. Home invasion gone wrong, they were both killed execution style. She was 30. Love you GPA Felix. And the other half of my soul is already in the after with Amelia. Growing up one of my older cousins was a legit sociopath. He was on meds for oppositional defiant disorder. Some of the pettier things he did included blowing up caterpillars and frogs with firecrackers, keeping a stockpile of knives under his bed, stealing bikes, things of that nature. Ducker even stole my Egyptian Mew card. One day, when I was around 9, 10, and he was 12, 13, we were playing in his backyard with several other kids. For some reason he took an axe and threw it at me as hard as he could. It went right past my head and lodged in the tree behind me. No doubt in my mind he was aiming for my head and missed. To this day I still don't know why he did it. I've kept my distance from him ever since. He wasn't mad at me or anything. We were just playing. Lately I haven't heard much about him besides that a mutual friend stopped talking to him because he got them addicted to coke, and he posts a lot of homophobic shit on social media. Oppositional defiant disorder is no joke. I know that firsthand because of a cousin who has it. I'm convinced he's going to prison eventually. He hasn't done anything big now, but I believe it's a matter of when. Not if. On top of that, his mom spoils him and treats her other two kids like garbage. On top of that, he even threw a hardcover textbook straight at my mom's face one time. Whole situation makes me depressed. Not me, but a girl I went to school with. Her deranged uncle broke into her house dressed as a FedEx driver while her parents were running errands. Mom and dad came home, tried to wrestle the gun from him before she and the husband were shot and killed. He then made all 5 kids lay on the floor as he shot them one by one. The bullet intended for my friend grazed her hand and head, and she played dead. She was the only survivor. She came back to school the next year, but people were horrible. There were nasty rumors about how she made it up, faked it, how it was her fault, etc. She's now engaged and in college. One of the strongest people I know, and such a sweetheart. People are horrible. How the heck could people insinuate it was her fault? Oh my god. Because people are shitty, and they have to make every situation about themselves. Somehow, some people said she was in on it and that's why she was the lone survivor. The case was pretty popular. You can look it up. Uncle killed girl's entire family and it'll pop up. It happened in Texas. I wasn't the intended target, but I cold died. I worked at small family owned bicycle shop. My boss, the father of the family, was a pretty nice guy, as far as I knew him. Anyway, one day, I was rearranging displays and my boss's wife and kids were there. A pretty normal day until somebody slammed the shop door open and emptied a full pistol clip into the shop, specifically at my boss. I got on my stomach as soon as I knew what was happening and waited until I heard the guy running away. My boss was shot a couple times in the head and chest and was obviously dead on the spot. His daughter got hit in the upper arm and the wife broke her arm diving to the floor. Edit. I tried to find any news article about this but couldn't. It happened in Iloilo City, Philippines around December 2015. Apparently, it was about my boss not paying money he owed to the guy that murdered him. Don't know if they ever caught him. Not my story, but my cousin's. She was married to this crazy man. I won't go into detail about the ways he was awful, but he was insane. Also, before he married my cousin, he had another family who all died in a house fire. All 4 of his children and his previous wife. We all felt bad for him for suffering such a tragic loss, because we didn't know what he was like behind the scenes at home. We never suspected anything off about that. Just thought it was a tragedy. Well, finally my cousin decided to leave him. She took her 2 kids and moved away. She had to leave abruptly, so she was missing a lot of important things. Social security cards, birth certificates, stuff like that. One day, after things cooled down some between her and her ex, she arranged for her to go over to their old house and gather the rest of their things. He asked that she bring the kids, because he missed them. Luckily, she decided to let them stay at their friend's house instead. She went over to the house, and he was absolutely enraged that she didn't bring the kids. He shot my cousin 4 times, and then shot himself in the head. He was planning to do a murder-suicide with the whole family. That's why he wanted the kids there. My cousin was shot twice in the neck, in the face, and in the arm. Somehow, none of the bullets struck any major arteries or anything. She was able to make it next door to her neighbor's house and get help. She survived a murder-suicide attempt, and her ex didn't. That whole thing really makes me look at that house fire tragedy in a different light.